Hi guys, and welcome to yet another review. I'm so sorry about the lack of a video this week because I have been away in Poland, which was literally an amazing experience, and I'll make another video about my experience in Krakow later this week. But it was an emotionally harrowing and just invaluable experience. Anyway, not here to talk about that today. Today, I'm here to do a review of yet another BBC adaptation. Yeah, we'll call them the adaptation series that the BBC did in September, where they remade Cider with Rosie. They remade An Inspector Calls, and what I'm going to be reviewing today, Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. Now, I have begun to read Lady Chatterley's Lover, and I have watched the 1980s version with Jolie Richardson and Sean Bean. What happened with this adaptation? It was really weird. Okay, so for those of you that don't know the plot of, brief plot overview of Lady Chatterley's Lover, Constance Chatterley, yeah, we'll call her Constance Chatterley. She is the wife of Clifford Chatterley, who has been severely disabled after serving in the First World War. He's paralysed from the waist down, and Constance begins to feel unfulfilled in her marriage because even though she's still got an intellectual connection with her husband, she needs the physical, she needs the passion, she needs a physical relationship. And well, in the book she has a lover before, which it was just a really weird section. But then she meets Oliver Mellors, who is the gamekeeper for Rugby, the Chatterley estate, and she embarks on a passionate love affair with him and has sexual awakenings left, right and centre. And yeah, that's a brief plot overview, and of course things get complicated when love starts getting thrown around, and you know that fun stuff. With this adaptation, it felt, the whole thing with Lady Chatterley's Lover, the book, and even with the 1980s version, there's a lot of sex in it. there just is. It's a very passionate, very raunchy novel. And there was, let's count on one hand, shall we? I think there was only one actual sex scene we see, and that was between Constance and Clifford. The others are kind of, you never actually see anything the first time Mellors and Constance have sex, and the next thing they do, it looks like they're having oral sex. It was really weird when you've got the 1980s version where pretty much every half an hour they're shagging. There wasn't the level of raunchiness there, which is why I don't think it's fared up as well as other adaptations, because the passion was not there. Pretty much no passion here. Just start off if that's what you were expecting from perhaps one of the most raunchy novels of all time. Okay, anyway, moving on. So my issue was, it's not particularly, considering the fact it is an adaptation, it is not particularly true to the book. But then again, this is a book where we have such little gems, as randomly they will start talking, he will start talking in we. It's like, oh, right. Didn't realise we were involved in this book as well. Yeah, ours is essentially a tragic age, so we refuse to take it tragically. We've got to live, no matter how many skies have fallen. Alright? That's why. Just random little bits where the author starts popping up and it's just like, oh right, yeah, okay. Right, so you're... this isn't real. Well, I mean, it's obviously not real anyway, it's a work of fiction. But the author just popping up to remind us of his message every now and again. Which, if you want a general overview of the message that D.H. Lawrence was trying to get across, it's that you can't have a fulfilling relationship without sex. Pretty much, I've saved you the time and the effort. Pretty much, women, if your husband doesn't satisfy you sexually, go off and have as many lovers as you like, because sex is important. Which is surprisingly liberal for a male writer. Well, not just... yeah, oh, when was this published? Just give us a second, dear. Just give us a second. Yeah, this was published in 1928. It's surprisingly liberal for a writer in 1928, never mind a man, to be so liberal about women's attitudes to sex. It's really weird. But props to you, D.H. Lawrence, props to you. But this adaptation just did not seem to have any of that passion, which I don't understand. I don't understand how you can deviate so much from the original text. Because my main issue, right, so in the novel we start off pretty much told straight away, you know, Clifford has been disabled, Constance is she's not particularly happy with her life. We don't meet Mellors for ages, and yet in the adaptation we get an entire backstory about him, and yet it's not the backstory he has in the book. Which, okay, I can understand you might not want to have the inclusion of Mellor's wife and his daughter. Fair enough. Why did you give him a very weird, convoluted connection to all of the male characters? Like, you've got his connection to Ted when they were both working in the works together. You have his connection to Clifford. I don't think Clifford and Mellors had ever met until he hired him, but apparently, according to this adaptation, Mellors was a bit of a dick and left him to die, which, if you're trying to make me sympathise with him, which you've pretty much just... The first 15 minutes is look at how shit everything has gone for Mellors. Why have that really weird bit of him being a bit of an anti-hero? It was really weird. And then you have him go home and see that his wife is just randomly standing by a window naked and is massively pregnant. So, the adaptation did not feel true to the book, but if we do not judge it as an adaptation, if we judge it as a work of TV, and it's technically a mini film, it's technically a short film, it is decent, right? It gets the message across it needs to. The casting was absolutely fantastic. Richard Madden, love of my life, #Bay, was fantastic. He found the vulnerability in the character of Mellors, and I thought it was so cute that you've got Sean Bean in the 1980 version, and then you've got Richard Madden, who played his son in Game of Thrones, taking on the mantle. It's just like, oh, it's cute, it's cute. He was fantastic with the material he was given. Holliday Granger, she was I'm not going to judge it on the adaptation because then that's just an entirely different ball game. Her performance was quite like Jolie Richardson's, so it did work. It was great, and you did, even though you don't see it particularly often, the relationship between Connie and Oliver Mellors is believable, which is great. Richard Norton is... I love him. I love him. I love him. Why do you give me these actors that I fall in love with? I mean, seriously. Kanye, kindly not. He was fantastic as Clifford. You genuinely do feel really sorry for him. He's not had a lot of luck, to be fair. His wife is going off bonking the gamekeeper, and you're disabled from the waist down. You can never fulfill your duty as a husband again. Although your mind is still there, you can't be as active, and you can't have children, which the scene where they try and stimulate his legs and his genitalia with electricity was so awful, and you're just sitting there. And in the book he's kind of he doesn't particularly do a lot, apart from mope, but you just felt so sorry for him. And when he was going to commit suicide, when he first gets back to Rugby, and he says, I'm going to free you from me, and he threatens to take his own life. Oh, the feelings were real. The feels. Well, it was just so sad, and you felt so sorry for him. And I think that's the mark of good acting, where with the material you're given, there are some times where Clifford comes across as a bit of a dick, but the fact that you genuinely feel sorry for him, and you appreciate the fact that had he not been through this terrible ordeal, he would have probably been the perfect husband to her. They would have had children. It would have been fantastic. But this thing has happened to him, and one of the people we're supposed to be rooting for, did nothing to help him, which it was a bit of an odd thing to make Mellors a bit of a... I mean, he's a bit of a dick anyway in the book, but the fact that he could have done something to help Clifford and he didn't. But then again, you could argue, oh, the damage was already done. But he could have done something. He just left him. It was a bit of a weird bit of script. Just thinking, which word to use? So many words to use, and I don't know how to English. But so the casting was great. The side characters, they served their purpose. They were pretty cool. The cinematography was once again absolutely sublime, fantastic, awesome. It was great. Yeah. So, in its own right, Lady Chatterley's Lover, 2015. It is a good story, but it's not. If you're going to deviate so far from the source material, can you really call it an adaptation? It says adapted from the T.H. Lawrence novel. Well, you're talking about a novel where Mellors is defined by how many fucks per minute he can say, and yet you have one swear word. You have Mellors say cock. That is it. Like this, I think the issue with it is it's been so watered down because BBC, which is kind of the issue when you make an adaptation with the BBC. You can't be particularly graphic. Considering this aired at 9 o'clock, I think, you can't do everything that you would want to, so you are limited. But if you're going to make something like this, you would probably want to find some way to find a channel or production company that will allow you to be as true as you can be, with swearing, sex, all that fun stuff. Yeah, it is a difficult situation when you're doing something for the BBC, but it's loosely adapted from it, very loosely adapted. So, right, I'm going to give this its final rating. The performances were fantastic. Yet again, going back to my point about the being very loosely adapted, it doesn't seem like any of the adaptations wanted to follow the ending. Now, spoiler alert here. Spoilers! At the end of the novel, we have Constance. She's living away from Clifford, but she isn't with Mellors. Mellors has buggered off, and she's wondering, you know, if there will be a time where she's able to go back to him with their child. It doesn't seem like any adaptation wants that kind of ending because it's too bleak. Instead, we have the 1980s version where you have Connie rushing off and getting to the ferry and being reunited with Mellors. And in this one, you have Clifford agreeing to divorce Connie, and then it's Mellors and Connie driving off with expressions I like to refer to as the Graduate ending. Because you've just got them and they both look the exact same way. If you watch the ending to The Graduate, you will see what I mean. They both just look really concerned, like, oh shit, we done screwed up here. We done screwed up. It's just, yeah, again, that's a problem with most adaptations. It's not just this, but it's a bit like, if you're gonna miss out everything else, can you not at least try and adhere to the general plot structure? You know, I'm not asking for a lot. Just if you're gonna call it an adaptation, you might, here's a novel. Try to adapt. Try and do something with it. So, but I'm going to judge this as a production in its own right. But obviously the fact that it doesn't feel like an adaptation does affect the rating slightly. Overall, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. The 2.5 comes off because it does not feel like an adaptation. It isn't true to the original story, and the ending just felt a bit, I don't know if it felt rushed so much, but it felt like they had dedicated so much time at the beginning to establishing everything that the last act is just kind of bam, 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 bam. And, right, so, my main issue, oh, nearly went over, is we see Connie and Oliver meet about 3 times as lovers, right? You have their initial, the first time that they go and have a bit of the rompe de pompe. The second time is Storm oral sex, and the third time is when they go to Tavistock Hall, where they go to the little fete bit. They're the 3 times you see them as lovers, and you mean to tell me, I mean there's no real distinction of time here, you're telling me those 3 times were enough for her to get pregnant? Like, there's not enough definition of time, because at the beginning it looks exactly as it does at the end. It looks like it's autumn, and you're telling me she's starting to show. We've only seen them have sex once. Like, what? But anyway, the cinematography was gorgeous, the acting was great, and I mean the actors did what they could with the material. And it's not terrible. It's not a terrible production. It's not a terrible piece of television making, but it isn't an adaptation. It isn't. Anyway, that has been my view, guys. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you next time. Later, guys!